Hey, Doug at Vanstrom Performance here. I wanted to start adding a little bit more content to my channel. Maybe change the name of it. It's Vanstrom Bros Racing right now, as you probably know, but might change that up so that it has my shop name on there instead. But wanted to talk about a couple projects in my shop right now, especially one in particular. I got a call, I don't know, 6 weeks or so ago from a customer or somebody that I had met at the track a couple years ago. I was at the track tuning and I had my camper set up, and John Frank was hanging out with us, and guy pitted next to us had a really cool turbo Grand National, pretty fast car, lots of boost, really neat. Well, they called me, him and his buddy called me and said, hey, you know, we've got a car that's going to the chassis shop right now, and we want you to go through it, through the engine, go through the car once it leaves the chassis shop, and you know, make this thing more suitable, faster, you know, kind of go through the combo and really dial everything in. And so the goal was they were going to pull the engine at the chassis shop, bring me the engine and tear it down. They weren't quite sure what it was. It was either a 302 or a 347, but it had a little Vortex supercharger on it and a factory EFI. And I said, well, bring it down. I'll tear it apart, find out exactly what it is, and, you know, what are your goals? The original goal was to run maybe some of the 650 index stuff with like the Buffalo Street Outlaws or the Empire Outlaws or at ESTA or whatever, but they wanted a car that could compete in 650, and maybe have a little bit extra in the tank. So they brought the engine over. Knew right off the bat, you know, it was an older build, stock block 302. Wasn't sure of the internals, so we tore it down. And it was a decent build. I mean, it was just an old build. It had a lot of time on it. It was beat. But it was a stock crankshaft, stock connecting rods, 40 over hypertectic pistons in it. Some decent heads, some older style inline valve heads. Had some porting done, maybe a little backwards. They ported a floor out of them pretty deep. So I knew it wasn't going to be real efficient to try to turn this thing into a 347 and really be able to push it to the goal that he wanted to do without a major expense. So we talked about a few different options, building a Windsor, you know, like a 408 with a ProCharger or something on it. And, you know, I've been doing this quite a while, and I've realized over the last few years that, and building a lot of competition small block Fords and mod motors, but, you know, it costs a lot to build a stock block Windsor stroker, and then to try to dial the thing back to, you know, 800, 900 horsepower so that it's reliable and can live, and you're not trying to split the block and say you know, every time you go down the track. And I said, you know, you're going to build a good competition engine. It's going to cost 10, 12 grand for a good setup. So what your car right now doesn't have K-member. You know, it's a good car, good solid car, but it didn't have K-member, didn't have good suspension in the front, stock steering column. It's not mini tub, which is fine. It doesn't need to be for the 275 we plan on putting on the car. Still has, you know, 4-lug axles and no exhaust, no headers, it has a factory FI, and the wiring in the car has just been a complete disaster when I went and looked at it. So, which is okay, but for what he wanted to do and what we do here, you know, I offered him a few options. I said, let's take a look at maybe doing a Coyote swap, because you can buy a good Gen 2 Coyote that'll hold the power that he needs to do, not really have to do a lot to it, except maybe some oil pump gears and timing chain gear, that lower crank gear, and a few odds and ends to beef it up. So that way it's a good, respectable, I don't want to say bulletproof build, but something that can hold some power, and that isn't just going to completely break the bank. You know, we all know, a lot of people know, that a stock Coyote block and crank can take a wallop. As opposed to building a Windsor and you're putting a dart block and all this other stuff in it. And honestly, you know, the modular crankshaft is a heck of a lot stronger than even an Eagle, you know, or Scat aftermarket stroker crank for a Windsor-based engine. So we went back and forth. We talked about a 460. We talked about a mod motor. He was looking for some stuff. And so I called my friend Mike Bowen down at Powerhouse and just outside of Erie in Girard, PA. And we were talking. You know, he had bought a ton of stock Coyote stuff from me as I'm doing a Coyote swap in my own 86 Mitsubishi Starion, which we'll do a whole nother video on that at some point. But I was talking to Mike, and he's like, yeah, I've got some stock parts, but I don't have a lot left. And he was kind of surprised at the stuff he didn't really have anymore. And he said, what do you think about a Godzilla? And the thought had crossed my mind regarding a Godzilla in one of my other cars, but I hadn't thought about it for this build until Mike mentioned it. And so I got on the phone with Rob Braun, the customer, and I asked him, what do you think? You know, I said, I think a Godzilla would be a really cool build for this thing. There's nothing locally. It's just starting to hit the aftermarket. Do you want me to put a quote together for you for that? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I was buried at the time, just running ragged, trying to get a car done that was going to Arizona. And I called my good friend Nick Todaro. I'm like, hey, man, you know, are you busy hanging out, doing whatever? And he's like, oh, you know, just, you know, doing his thing. And I said, I could use a little help getting some pre-calling, getting some contact information and some vendor information. And this is what I'm looking to do. And I explained what I wanted to him. And just like Nick always does, he put together some phones, he made phone numbers, he made some contacts, put me in touch with some people, and we started making calls. We were able to nail some prices down and put a fairly decent budget together for this build. And also my buddy Tony Tondrick, he got me in touch with Chris over at the Supercharger store, and I presented the budget to Rob, and he's like, man, let's do it. And before I knew it, there was just parts flying in here like crazy. So we ordered a Haltech 2500 system for the car with the dual wideband O2s, the IC7 dash, and I started just doing a ton of research on the engine. I had done some before, but not this in depth. And of course, we had talked to a couple people. We talked to Willis Racing Engines and their ideas. You know, we knew what power we were looking to make, and this suddenly turned from a 650 car into, you know, this thing's going to be 550 capable with really not a lot of work. You know, a lot of the stuff that we're doing to make this thing a 650 car, it's probably going to run 550s anyway. So that became the new kind of the new goal. And I got a hold of Todd Warren at Apocalypse Performance, Todd Warren Cams. I've known Todd from a lot of the forums, and I've installed quite a few of his camshafts for mod motors, and have, you know, messaged back and forth on what he wanted for intake center lines and stuff like that for those. So we kind of knew each other a little bit through that. And so we nailed out a package with Todd for connecting rods, valve train, and, you know, he had a lot of R&D on these engines, so he kind of knew what it was going to take. And nothing against Willis. I mean, Willis Performance, they do a great job. But I think what we were discussing with them and what we were discussing with Todd were, you know, a 15, 16, 1700 horsepower build versus a, you know, 1,000, 1,100 wheel type deal. So, which is where we seriously wanted to be. There's no sense in building an engine just completely obnoxious for something that's going to be a 550 car. It only has an 8-point cage on it, a very nice one, done by Affordable Speed and Fabrication, Jason Staples out of Yorkshire, which is about 45 minutes from here. He did a killer job on this, and I'll show some pictures and videos of that here shortly. But to get back on topic, with Todd, we discussed, you know, we can use the stock cylinder heads in their form. We can use the stock valves and valve train to a point. We plan on using the stock manifold. We're not trying to make this thing a killer. But at the same time, we wanted to overbuild it a little bit as far as bottom end was concerned, so that way we're not worrying about this thing coming apart. You know, say we decide we want to give it a little bit more. All right, so we've got some Molnar power adder rods from Apocalypse. He's got some custom pistons being made for this thing, custom ring package. We have, see, some retainers from Pack. We have some Beehive valve springs from Pack and from Apocalypse Performance. Really nice stuff. Without really going crazy. And then Todd's still working on the camshaft. We have to get a call together and discuss some finalization with that. But we've got some really nice rods that use a factory Coyote rod bearing. We do have some coated Coyote rod bearings for this. And I'll show the Haltech stuff here soon. We have some billet fuel rails that were sourced by Todd Warren from Billet Pro Shop. And some other cool billet block off plates and what have you for this. We have a swap oil pan coming from 417 Motorsports with the it's a billet pan rail with an integral O-ring, so it'll make maintenance real easy instead of having to goop it all up. And we got an engine, ordered it right from Summit, believe it or not. I couldn't believe the price of a Ford Performance 7.3 Godzilla crate engine delivered right from Summit. It was like around $6,500. How do you beat that? Really, you've got a iron block with 4-bolt mains with side bolts, so effectively almost 6-bolt if you want to call it. A forged crankshaft, which is right around, not quite 4-inch stroke, a little bit less. You've got a big 4220 bore. We're bumping the compression up. And we'll probably update the throttle body from the factory drive-by-wire 80 millimeter. We've discussed going to the 87 millimeter GT350, or possibly even a cable drive LS style 102. That is still on the fence. But Chris at the Supercharger store hooked us up with a F1A 94 ProCharger setup. They have designed, ProCharger designed a complete setup for the Godzilla. Comes with the damper, the belt setup, the pulleys, the brackets. So we upgraded to the 10 rib setup and the 1300 horsepower intercooler, air to air. And then of course I'll fab up whatever cold side we need. Comes with their race blow off valve. Things are going to be pretty trick. One of our big topics of discussion was going to be the transmission. He currently has a turbo 350 in the car. Didn't really want to use that. He does have a C4, which, you know, C4s can hold some power, but I don't think that they're going to hold the torque that this thing is going to make. And from a lot of the research that I've done, these things make damn near as much torque than they do horsepower. And they get it done early, like right now. We're talking below 4,000 RPM up to 1,000 foot-pounds of torque at, say, 18 pounds of boost or so. That's a lot. And I think that that little input shaft and clutch setup in that C4 is just going to be begging for mercy. So the discussion has been to get a turbo 350 with a modular bell housing. The 7.3 Godzilla takes the same bell housing, flex plate bolts, everything that a 4.6, 5.4 Coyote mod motor would all take. So that's easy. That's the easy part. We got a complete K-member setup from Team Z right here. This is built for a Foxbody with a Godzilla engine on it. Super excited about that. Makes fabrication a lot easier. As some of you know, I'm building my Mitsubishi right now with the Coyote motor in it, and I have to make everything. You know, there's nothing that'll bolt in. So anything that helps get this project done faster is huge. So I will take you around and show you the engine here. All right, here's the Godzilla. This is right from Ford Performance. Comes with the exhaust manifolds that we're not going to use. The factory fuel rails, which is nice on these, is actually in the cylinder head. It's not in the manifold. But it came with a complete wiring harness, which I've started to go through the pinning process. I'm going to change this to a bulkhead style connector. So that way it's plug and play. And then I'm going to make a harness from that goes right to the Haltech ECU. Let's see here. Has dumb coils on it, which for those that aren't familiar, dumb coil is just a 2-wire coil. It needs a igniter to fire. It's not like a smart coil that has a built-in igniter. Haltech provides or offers, I should say, a 8-channel igniter for a setup just like this. Very inexpensive. So you wire it in and you're good to go. Really cool setup. Crank trigger with a toothed wheel on the back. A lot easier than an internal. Comes with all the pulleys and brackets you need except for the alternator and the alternator bracket, which is okay. We can source that differently. We've got some billet plugs to replace this stuff here. Just a really cool setup. It's right now it's pretty heavy. This thing had a 3-valve on this engine stand just before, and I picked that block up and threw it in the back of the truck. You can almost do it with one hand. This thing, not so much. I'm not going to say it's stupid heavy. I want to say it's somewhere in between a mod motor and a factory Windsor, with an like an iron-headed Windsor. But these heads are massive. Really cool port design on them. I'm going to start tearing this thing down soon. But it has an electronic modulated bypass for the oil pressure. So you can drive the oil pressure based on RPM. Oil pump is chain driven. This pump currently has an external cooler on it. We're not going to use any of that. As a matter of fact, we're not even going to use the pan. Like I said, we have a 417 Motorsports aluminum fabricated pan coming. And this is the car. Now, yes, it is dirty and salty. The car showed up a day and a half ago. Let me clean my lens here. On an open trailer from Sardinia. And the pathway from Sardinia to here is not a good one, and the roads were covered in salt. So the first thing we're going to do with this car is get it outside. I'm going to wash it down good, get all the salt off of it. We're going to go through the car, come up with a game plan. This has an absolutely beautiful, tight-fitting cage done by Jason Staples. This thing is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's right tight up against the roof. These door swing outs, a lot of these are super tight. This thing is nice. Very well done. So I'm going to be pulling the dash, the shifter. All the wiring that's in the car is coming out. A lot of the weight is coming out. And we'll probably respace the rear wheels, or have to roll the lips one way or the other. That's all coming out. Everything. She will be a beautiful, beautiful piece when it is done. And I will make videos of the process along the way. We have a steering rack from, it's a Flaming River. We bought everything from Team Z. We have coilovers. We have camber caster plates. We have all the steering components, the springs, everything from Team Z Motorsports. The power steering, there's a huge, I didn't realize it was still full power steering fluid, but it's all over the place. So when I push the car out to wash it, we're going to clean all that up. We'll get the tranny out of it, get the exhaust off of it, and then just go through the car, and we're going to start making things happen here. And of course, I'll keep you updated. This car will be washed the next time you see it, and get this New York salt off of this thing so it doesn't start eating it. And then this is Brett Smith's car up on the rack. His 66 Chevelle SS with a gnarly 6-liter Brodix heads. We just took those Chinese turbos off, and it has a set of forced inductions 6870s with S covers on it, and things should be pretty beefy. We switched it over to Holley fuel injection, and you know, that's where we're at. We ran all the fuel lines and everything on that the other day. All the wiring is done on the car. I'm waiting on a couple pieces to finish up the intercooler hookup on the other side. So of course that header is just on there, not the turbo's on it yet. Once I get those bends, I'm got coming from Dan Sates of High Performance Motorsports, then we can finish that up. And of course there'll be more on this car. Oh, and yeah, the Haltech, I forgot to show you that. This is a wiring harness for this cool little piece right here. This is the HP8 igniter. This little guy right here. Hard to tell, but it's smaller than my hand. That's what runs the coils, the harness for that. We have a beautiful Haltech IC7 dash. Which we will program to do all kinds of neat stuff. Here is our dual wideband O2 setup with all the bungs, the sensors, everything we need. This thing will be, it's going to be dual tuned on E85 and race gas, the 7.3 is going to be. So that way he has options. I like to do it that way. That way if a customer decides down the road, oh my gosh, you know what, I just can't keep finding E85. I just want to put this thing on race gas. Well, switch the tune and you're set. Got some sensors, some bungs, stuff like that. Everything from Haltech. If anybody needs anything from Haltech, I am a dealer. I have a lot of experience also with Holley. I was a Holley racer, or had Holley on all my cars for years. And I have nothing, absolutely nothing against Holley. They have a great product. However, I decided that Haltech was the way to go for me and a few of my customers. I still do a lot of installs on Holley, tune some fuel tech. But that said, hopefully this girl soon is under the hood of this. And then once we get everything dialed in and mocked up, we're going to send her down to Ultimate Headers, where Ultimate Headers will be making the custom headers for this. And I'm excited that I don't have to do it. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you watching my video. Talk to you later. Bye.